begin to look at what finding the area of a circle is going to be about. We already know what pi is. That's going to be 3.14. But the formula that we use for finding area of a circle is simply this. A equals pi r squared. Now, a couple of things we need to look at up here. Hopefully by now we know that r stands for radius. The r will stand for radius, so that means that's the number we're going to have squared. Now, if we're don't remember this, or haven't seen this before, when I say r squared, this is what we're going to do. If the r that I'm looking at equals 5, and that simply means I'm going to take 5 times 5. And 5 times 5, of course, is 25. That's all that we mean by saying r squared. The 5 replaces the r. R squared simply means 5 times 5 to get us 25. That's all that we have to do with that. Now that we've got our formula and we've done a little bit of practice with this, let's look at some problems. Here's my circle. This time I put a diameter up here, and let's say my diameter is 12. If my diameter is 12, that must mean my radius right here is going to be 6. Okay? I want to calculate the area of this circle. Remember my formula. A equals pi r squared. So let's look at that a minute. Area, pi r squared. We know by now that pi equals 3.14. That's something I think we all remember. So, diameter on this one is 12. Does not say anything about diameter. So we're really right now, we don't need this number at all. We might later on. It tells me that I have a radius of 6. So let's go back and do some substitutions. A equals pi times 6 squared. Well, we just said that squaring a number means just to take that number and multiply it times itself. And we know that 6 times 6 is 36. Okay? Now we can go back and plug this part in. And it means area equals pi times 36. Now take a look at that for just a minute. We started off with a circle. It had a radius right here of 6. And we can call it inches, centimeters, doesn't really matter. It has a radius of 6. Okay? My formula, again, A equals pi r squared. We know that pi is 3.14. So we're going to put pi here. We're going to take our 6 we got from right here, plug that in place of our r, and we know that squaring a number means 6 times 6. So now we're going to go here to this next line and put 36 in place of 6 squared. That's what we've done up to this point. Now all I have left to do is take pi of 3.14, and we're going to multiply that times 36. 4 plus 2 is 8, and we got 18. Offset that to the 0. That'll be 12, and 4, and 9. So I extend that on down here. I've got an answer, let's rewrite it over here, of 11,304. Now the other important part I was telling you about earlier, we need to go back and look at our problem, check number of decimal places. Here's my decimal. I've got 2 digits. 2 digits that are behind this decimal. Don't have any on this line right here. Just simply these 2 right here. So I need to start at the back and back up 2 places, and my decimal will go between the 3 and the 0. I'll have an answer of 113 and 4/100 for my area of this particular circle. Now that looks like a long drawn out process, and it gets lengthy at times, but this is nothing more than just basic simple math that you've been doing that for a couple of years. We're putting 2 or 3 different steps together. So that's going to be the only problem you should have. If you take it slow and easy, you're going to be just fine. But you have to do each step individually You put all of it back together, be sure to count your decimal places, and that's what you've got. And let's take another example. This time I'm going to give you the diameter. I'm going to call that diameter 16. I'm not going to put the radius up here, but by now I think we should realize what we need to do to calculate radius. We know again our formula for area, pi r squared. So if I've got a diameter of 16, remember we said earlier, radius is simply half of the diameter. So if my diameter is 16, then half of 16 is simply going to be 8. So I'm going to plug that in right here in place of the r and put the square up here above it, the exponent of 2. We know that 8 times 8 by our times table simply is 64. So now that's going to replace my r and my 8 right here. So we'll rewrite that again over here, pi times 64. Okay. Take a look at that for just a second. Let's slow down, go back and look at it. My diameter of this circle is 16. If my diameter is 16, that tells me that my radius is half of that. Half of 16, of course, is 8. I plug that radius of 8 in back up here, right here in this step. R squared simply means 8 times 8. That's where we get our 64. Okay. Now let's take our next step. We know that pi is 3.14. So we need to take 3.14, multiply that times 64, and we'll go from there. And I didn't put my lines this time, so I'm going to have to be very careful with my handwriting. So I get 20096. Once again, look up here. Here's my decimal. Okay? Behind my decimal, I have 2 digits. 2 digits behind this decimal. No decimal present in this number here, so I'm using 2 spaces. That means I start at the back of my answer right here, and I back up 2 places. That gives me an answer of 200.96, or 296 hundredths. I want us to look at one other one that's a little bit different. Now, that gives us 2 examples that we can work with. Now, by having this on video, you can go back and replay this as many times as you need to look at it to get a better understanding of it. I need to put one other one up here, a little bit more difficult, but no, just a little bit more decimal work to do, and that's about it. If I give you one here, and this time I give you a